They told us ancient people were primitive, they were wrong. What they built with no technology, no stores, no backup plan still works today. All 10 of these skills do. Subscribe, drop your state or country in the comments, and share this with one person who needs to see it. Let's get into it. Skill 10, Grass Mats for Water Collection. Before water bottles, before purification tablets, before any of it, people pulled drinking water straight from the air, every single morning. Across Africa, Australia, and the ancient Americas, communities wove thick mats from long-bladed grasses, laid them flat before dusk or propped them at an angle facing the open sky, and by sunrise those mats were dripping. Not with rain, with dew, atmospheric moisture that had condensed onto thousands of tiny grass fibers through the night. Studies suggest a well-constructed mat of just a few square feet can collect several hundred milliliters of water overnight depending on humidity. That's meaningful when the human body needs less than a liter per day to function at a survival minimum. The physics is the same reason a cold glass sweats on a warm day. Grass fibers cool faster than the surrounding air, moisture hits those cold surfaces and becomes liquid. You position the mat, the atmosphere did the work. We stopped doing this because plastic bottles and tap water made it pointless. But when those things disappear, long grass and cool nights are still everywhere, and this technique still works exactly the same way it did 10,000 years ago. The air has always carried water, ancient people just knew how to catch it. Skill 9, Fish Trap Basket Weaving. Modern fishing is active, you go to the water, you wait, you work for your catch. Ancient fishing was passive, you built the trap, walked away, and came back to food. The woven fish trap, a cone inside a cone basket made from flexible branches, reeds, or split bamboo, is one of the most brilliantly efficient food collection tools ever designed. Ancient Egypt used it. Feudal Japan refined it. The Niger Delta, the Pacific Islands, the Cherokee Nation all independently arrived at nearly the same design. When unconnected civilizations across the world solve the same problem the same way, that's not coincidence. That's a correct answer. Fish enter following current or bait drawn to the narrow inner opening. The cone geometry makes it almost impossible for them to find the exit. You set it, leave it, and come back hours later. Research indicates passive trapping yields significantly more food per hour of human effort than active rod fishing in most freshwater environments. The craft itself is learning to weave tightly enough to contain fish but openly enough to let current flow through, because if water can't pass, the trap pushes fish away from the entrance rather than drawing them in. This was never lost because it stopped working. It was lost because supermarkets made it unnecessary, but near any river or stream in the world, this skill feeds you indefinitely. A few branches woven by hand in an afternoon can be the difference between starving and surviving. That's the kind of math worth knowing. Skill 8, Shell and Stone Water Filter. Unfiltered surface water kills, it always has. And long before ceramic filters or reverse osmosis machines, people solved this problem with what the riverbed gave them. Across Pacific Island cultures, Southeast Asia, and parts of pre-colonial Africa, layered sediment filtration was standard knowledge. Crushed shell, gravel, coarse sand, fine sand, and charcoal, stacked in deliberate sequence inside a hollow bamboo tube, a bark cone, or a clay vessel, created a mechanical filter capable of removing sediment, parasites, and a meaningful portion of biological contaminants from murky water. Studies suggest that properly layered sediment filtration reduces particulate matter and many pathogens significantly, not to the level of a modern ceramic filter but dramatically safer than drinking raw surface water. The key is sequence. Coarse material catches large debris, fine sand traps smaller particles, and charcoal absorbs certain toxins and improves taste by bonding with contaminant molecules. The practical build: collect crushed shell or small gravel, fine sand from a riverbed, and plant charcoal from your fire. Layer them alternately from coarse to fine inside any hollow tube or container with a small drainage hole. Pour murky water in the top. Collect filtered water at the bottom. Boil if possible after filtering. This knowledge was sidelined by commercial water filters and municipal treatment systems. But the principle behind every filter ever built, layered media, gravity, time, was figured out by people sitting next to rivers long before anyone wrote it in a textbook. The river gives you the problem and the solution at the same time, you just have to know where to look. Skill 7, Tree Resin WATRPROFING. Before Gore-Tex, before rubber, before silicone sealant, forests were already producing a waterproofing agent that lasted thousands of years. Literally. Tree resin, the thick, sticky sap that seeps from wounded pine, spruce, fir, and dozens of other species, has been used to seal longboats, waterproof canoes, coat boots, and protect woven baskets from moisture for at least 6,000 years. Norse shipbuilders relied on it. Roman military physicians carried it. Native American craftspeople used it on everything from footwear to food storage vessels. Research indicates that cured pine resin forms a polymer-like barrier when heated and applied to surfaces, chemically similar in function to certain synthetic sealants, and naturally contains antimicrobial compounds that protect the sealed material from rot and microbial growth simultaneously. To use it, collect hardened resin from the wounded bark of any pine or spruce tree. Melt it slowly over low, indirect heat, never open flame as it ignites easily. Apply in thin coats with a stick to fabric, leather, or woven material and let it set as it cools. For flexible surfaces, traditional practitioners blended it with plant oil or animal fat to prevent cracking under movement. We forgot this because synthetic waterproofing became cheap. But synthetic waterproofing requires a factory, a supply chain, and a store. Resin requires a tree with a scar. There is always a tree with a scar. The forest has always been a hardware store. The inventory never ran out. Skill 6, Mud Insulation for Cold. Say this out loud before you dismiss it. Mud keeps you warm. Now let me show you why that sentence is physics, not folklore. From the clay-packed earthen homes of the African Sahel to the sod longhouses of northern Europe to the adobe structures of the American Southwest, civilizations on opposite ends of the earth all discovered the same truth: thick, dense mud is one of the most effective thermal insulators nature provides. Studies suggest that damp clay-based soil has a thermal mass comparable to certain modern building insulation materials. It absorbs heat slowly, retains it, and releases it gradually, smoothing out the brutal temperature swings that kill people in exposed environments. It also seals every gap that wind can find. In survival application, packing mud into the walls, floor, and ceiling joints of a makeshift debris shelter reduces heat loss overnight by a significant margin. You are not relying on mud for warmth, you are relying on your own body heat, and mud is preventing that heat from escaping. There are also well-documented accounts from indigenous subarctic communities of applying cooled, thick mud to exposed skin as an emergency insulating barrier, covered with dry grass or bark, to delay the onset of frostbite when no other materials were available. This was replaced by fiberglass insulation, spray foam, and central heating. But on a hillside in freezing temperatures with none of those things, the ground under your feet is still holding this secret, still ready to be used, completely free of charge. The earth does not just feed us, it will shelter us too if we remember how to ask. Skill 5, Bark as Emergency Bandage. We are past the halfway point now, and this is where things start to get genuinely uncomfortable, because this is where ancient knowledge stops looking primitive and starts looking prescient. The soft inner bark of birch, willow, elm, and pine trees, the moist, pale cambium layer just beneath the rough outer surface, has been used as wound dressing across Native American, Norse, East Asian, and Aboriginal Australian traditions for more than 5,000 years. Not the bark you see, the layer underneath it. Research indicates that birch bark specifically contains betulin and betulinic acid, compounds now being studied in pharmaceutical research for anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. Willow bark contains salicin, the very compound that scientists later synthesized into aspirin. These are not coincidences. These are discoveries made by people paying very close attention for a very long time. In practice, peel back the outer bark of a birch or willow tree and harvest the soft inner layer in strips. It is slightly moist, flexible, and conforms naturally to a wound surface. Pressed firmly against a cut and secured with plant fiber cordage, it functions as a natural bandage, protecting the wound from contamination and providing mild anti-inflammatory contact. When paired with honey, which is coming next, the traditional results were extraordinary by any era's standards. This was forgotten not because it stopped working. Sterile gauze is easier to manufacture, easier to package, easier to sell. The bark doesn't need packaging, it's already on the tree, it's been waiting there the whole time. The forest has been a pharmacy longer than we've had pharmacies. We simply stopped reading the labels. Skill 4. Honey as antiseptic. This is not a folk remedy, this is a folk remedy that became a licensed medical product. Pay attention. Raw honey, wild or minimally processed, not the heated and filtered kind in most grocery stores, has been applied directly to wounds, burns, and infected tissue since ancient Egypt. Papyrus medical records from 3,000 years ago document it. Greek physicians prescribed it. Roman army medics carried it on campaign. It was standard wound care across cultures on nearly every continent independently, without contact with each other. Here is the mechanism in plain language. Honey's extremely low water content and high sugar concentration create an osmotic environment that pulls moisture out of bacterial cells, killing them through dehydration. Simultaneously, an enzyme reaction between honey and wound tissue naturally generates small amounts of hydrogen peroxide, a recognized antiseptic. And research indicates that certain raw honeys, particularly Manuka honey from New Zealand, contain methylglyoxal, a compound with demonstrated antimicrobial activity even against antibiotic-resistant bacteria strains. Medihoney, a medical-grade honey product derived from this exact principle, is now used in licensed clinical wound care across hospitals in Europe and Australia. This is not anecdote. This is ancient knowledge that passed through a clinical trial and came out the other side validated. In survival application, apply raw honey generously and directly to a wound. Cover with bark, clean leaves, or cloth. Reapply as available. The honey creates a protective antimicrobial seal that simultaneously keeps the wound moist for healing and hostile for infection. This was sidelined because antibiotics were faster, more predictable, easier to standardize. But antibiotics require pharmaceutical infrastructure. Honey requires a bee. Bees have been here for 50 million years and they are not stopping. When every system breaks down, bees keep working. That means the pharmacy never fully closes. Skill 3. Spider silk thread. What if the strongest fiber in the natural world was already being harvested by indigenous peoples, centuries before materials science even had a name for what made it special? Spider silk, gram for gram, is stronger than steel and more elastic than Kevlar. This is not metaphor. This is materials engineering. A fiber of spider silk the same thickness as a strand of steel wire will outlast the steel under tension and absorb far more impact energy before breaking. Communities in Papua New Guinea harvested the large, dense webs of golden orbweaver spiders to use as fishing line, thin, nearly invisible in water, and extraordinarily strong relative to its weight. Cultures across Asia and parts of the Americas used spider silk as fine suture material for wounds, pressing the silk directly to wound edges to draw tissue together. Research indicates spider silk is naturally biocompatible with human tissue, meaning the body does not aggressively reject it, and it carries inherent antimicrobial properties. DARPA, the U.S. military's advanced research agency, has invested tens of millions of dollars attempting to synthesize spider silk artificially for use in bulletproof materials, medical sutures, and flexible armor. They are still working on matching what a spider produces in real time, effortlessly, every day. In a survival context, the silk from large orbweaver webs, those circular, wheel-structured webs found in open forest clearings, can be gathered by rolling multiple webs around a stick, creating a surprisingly strong multi-strand thread usable for fine binding, fishing line, or wound closure. We did not discover the value of spider silk. We rediscovered it after years of expensive research and still cannot fully replicate it. Ancient people did not have the words for tensile strength or biocompatibility. They had something better, the patience to observe and the wisdom to use what they found. Skill 2. Snake venom neutralization. Everything until now has been building to these final two. Do not close this video. Snakebite kills over 100,000 people every year. The overwhelming majority of those deaths happen not because antivenom doesn't exist, it does, but because the people who need it are too far from a hospital to receive it in time. Rural, remote, without infrastructure, the exact conditions where ancient survival knowledge was built. Before we go further, this is not medical advice. If you are bitten by a venomous snake, get to emergency care immediately. What follows is documented traditional knowledge and active scientific research that may reshape how this crisis is addressed globally. Traditional healers across Nigeria, India, Brazil, and Aboriginal Australia developed specific plant-based emergency protocols for snakebite that have now attracted serious academic investigation. Research indicates that preparations from the Mucuna pruriens plant, the velvet bean, used in West African and South Asian traditional medicine, contain proteins that may inhibit phospholipase A2, one of the key toxic enzymes present in many snake venoms. Studies in laboratory settings have shown measurable venom-neutralizing activity from these compounds. Separately, traditional practitioners across multiple cultures applied poultices of plant-derived activated charcoal, produced by controlled burning of specific plant materials, to bite sites, attempting to adsorb toxins before full absorption. Modern poison control medicine still uses activated charcoal for certain ingested toxins. The principle is identical. But the deepest revelation here is this. Several traditional communities in Brazil and India maintain structured, multi-generational practices of low-dose venom exposure to develop immunity, carefully observed, carefully administered, passed down through oral tradition. This is the direct conceptual ancestor of antivenom therapy, which works by repeatedly exposing horses to escalating doses of snake venom to generate the antibodies that are then harvested and administered to bite victims. Modern antivenom, used in every hospital on Earth, is built on a biological principle that traditional peoples enacted without microscopes, without immunology textbooks, and without clinical trials. They just watched, recorded in memory, and passed it forward. Research teams at the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and universities across Brazil are now formally studying traditional plant-based snakebite remedies specifically to find low-cost, field-deployable solutions for rural communities where antivenom doesn't arrive in time. This knowledge was not primitive superstition. It was field medicine at the highest possible stakes, refined across generations of life and death, and it is now being taken seriously by the very institutions that once dismissed it. The people who held this knowledge were not behind us. In some ways, they were already waiting for us to catch up. Skill 1: the revelation, fire bow drill technique. And here we are, the one that started everything. Not a plant, not a filter, not a trap. Fire, the ability to make it from nothing, from 2 pieces of wood and your own 2 hands, is not just a survival skill. It is the foundational act that separated human beings from every other species on this planet, and almost nobody alive today knows how to do it. The fire bow drill is the oldest reliably documented fire-making method in human history. A flexible bow strung with cordage, wrapped once around a straight spindle of dry softwood, pressed against a flat fireboard with a handhold above, and then worked back and forth in long, steady strokes that spin the spindle against the board at hundreds of rotations per minute, generating friction heat, then a glowing ember, then fire. Archaeological evidence places this technique at over 10,000 years of use across nearly every inhabited continent. The Lakota used it, the Inuit used it, Aboriginal Australians used it, ancient Egyptians depicted it in tomb art. This was not one civilization's discovery. This was humanity's discovery, made independently across the world because the physics worked everywhere the same. Research in primitive technology and thermodynamics confirms that the bow drill method can consistently generate an ember in under 2 minutes in optimal conditions. Dry wood, correct species pairing, practice technique. The critical species pairings vary by region. Cottonwood, willow, and cedar are widely recommended in North American settings. Various hardwood-softwood combinations perform across other climates. But the skill goes beyond fire. The bow drill teaches something deeper, and this is what most people miss. It teaches you that under real survival pressure, speed is not what saves you. Technique saves you. Stillness saves you. Breathing saves you. Ancient peoples who relied on this daily did not rush it. They slowed down, matched their rhythm to the wood, and let friction do the work. That lesson, slow down, use technique, let the process work, applies to every other skill on this list. The grass mat needs time overnight. The fish trap needs patience. The honey needs to be applied and left. The resin needs to cool. Every single ancient survival technique on this list runs on patience, not speed. We forgot the fire bow drill because lighters cost $1 and last a month. We forgot patience because everything in modern life is instant, but a lighter runs out, patience does not. The first human being who ever made fire with a bow drill changed the world. The technique has not changed since. Everything else around it has been lost and rebuilt 100 times. This one survived. That's not primitive, that's permanent. 10 skills, 0 technology, all still working. This knowledge never expired, we just stopped reaching for it. Now you know where it is. Comment your state or country below, subscribe for what's coming next. and send this to one person right now, one person who needs it, that's all.